All right, so I'm Chaplain Mesaeh. I'm batting cleanup. I'm the last one to go today. I'm the OG chaplain. I've been around a while. I see a lot of familiar faces. So I have two reasons I'll say why I am really passionate about this stuff, why I love marriage enrichment. First one, and the biggest one for me, is I'm a Christian. That's probably no surprise. Like, I'm a chaplain, and I'm a Christian chaplain. That may not be your background. That's fine. It is mine. And as a Christian, I believe we have an enemy, a spiritual enemy. And if I were him, and I wanted to bring God's agenda down, slow it down and destroy it, I would attack this unit right here, like the family. That's where I would go. That would be my prime target. Because you destroy the family structure, and it's really hard for the church to be healthy. So that's my biggest reason why I love this stuff and encouraged by it myself. The second reason is, so I adore my wife. She's my best friend. I'm not just saying that because she's not here. But her friends are, and they would tell her what I say. I actually mean it. I do. But, oh dear God, it was not always that way. So everything I'm going to say, I have her permission to say. Like, she knows I'm going to say what I'm going to say. We're coming up on 18 years, and it's wonderful. But it was so not wonderful for a while. We didn't do any kind of like pre-marriage counseling at all. We didn't have time for that. We did, but we didn't take the time. I just saw a pretty girl who wanted to marry me. I'm like, I better seal the deal quick before she changes her mind. And so we did no prep work at all, and it was really, really bad. So we spent the first, I'll be very open and transparent with this. We spent the first 3 to 4 years like blatantly hating one another. And we just said that, like, flat out. Like, I hate you. Well, I hate you more than you hate me. I doubt it. So that was 3 or 4 years. Like, that's how we got started. And we were definitely, like, we've never been romantics at any point in our life. If so, we would have quit. We were resolute, like, right out of the gate. And then we had a kid. We made a kid a couple years in. And so we're like, man, we're really, really stuck. And I was E-nothing, I don't know. 15 years ago, enlisted in the Army. Well, I've enlisted more than 15, but this was about 15 years ago, this story I'm going to tell you. And we went to one of these, like, marriage conferences. It was a 2-day thing. We were stationed in Korea at the time. And we didn't go back to the second day because we spent the whole night of the first one fighting with each other over the stuff we learned on the first day. We got home and I was like, yeah, you do that, damn, you do that all the time. And then it was just on, like, and we just fought all night long, and we didn't go back the next day because, well, we didn't need any more ammo. We had enough. So we just had a really, really rocky, like a tough beginning. And so we got the cops called on us one night because we were fighting. This is not a story I'm proud of, but it's part of my story, and so I tell it. And that was so incredibly embarrassing, like extremely embarrassing, because we were fighting so loud that the cops came. Like, who wants to go on Jerry Springer, like that be their story? And so we decided maybe we should try to start working on the marriage. And we did. This is around year 4. And we were living in an apartment that 3 of them probably would have fit in this room. 3 of those apartments. It was enlisted housing in Korea. And so we couldn't get away from each other. And that's actually one of the things that we have since then said kind of like saved our marriage was poverty. Because I was at E4 at the time, I think, and we had a kid. And so I could not afford to buy 2 plane tickets to send them back home from Korea to Indiana. If I could have, I would have, like, in a heartbeat. But then we would have, like, grown our separate ways and ended up getting a divorce. And so we had to stay together in that little apartment and fight it out. And we eventually started trying to make our marriage better. And at first, it got worse. It's a happy story eventually, I promise. But, like, at the beginning, it got worse because we actually started trying. And, like, I'll just speak for me because I'm a guy. And I don't do anything without announcing it and expecting credit. And so every time I did something that I thought was good, I would make sure she knew that I did that thing. And then I would wait, like, for her to reciprocate and work at least as hard, if not, like, preferably harder than I was working. And so we fought over that for quite a while. It got worse before it got better. But it did eventually get better. And I mean it. Like, she's my best friend. If you know us very well, like, at all, you know, I'm not just saying that. It's true. Like, she's awesome. She rocks. And a couple things along the way really helped us. A lot of things have. But as I was sitting down thinking, like, what I want to talk about today, and I only have about 3 hours to talk, so okay. This came to mind. So this is one of the bigger things that really did a lot for our marriage early on, and I would say continues to really like enrich and feed our marriage, is this idea of love and respect. So if you were to ask any couple, like your average couple, husbands and wives separately answering, if you had to pick, would you rather your spouse love you or respect you? And you kind of press them and they can only pick one option, love or respect. What you would find is, statistically, the answers would line up depending on your gender. I don't have the exact numbers. They're in a book that I'm going to talk about here in a minute. But around 85% of men consistently say, if I had to pick one, I'd say I want respect. And it's not quite as consistent, but it's like high 70s. It's close. High 70s, 78, 79% of women would say, I would pick love. Now, there's not a man on the planet like who doesn't want his wife to love him. Like, sure, I want my wife to love me. And no woman ever wants to be disrespected. But if we could only pick one, those tend to be the options that we pick. And if you think for a minute about those numbers, they're amazing. Those are some consistent statistics that we really, like, you can ignore them if you want. We tried, and I just told you how well it worked for us. Like, if you're ignoring them, there's a really good chance it is hurting your marriage significantly. This idea that men need, not want, but need to be respected, and women need to feel loved. Now, that's one of the reasons why, like, I don't care what your faith background is, like, you could worship the Easter Bunny, and you could still find these numbers to be significant. Like, it didn't have to be faith-based. 80-some% of men say they need to be respected. If I'm a wife, I might want to pay attention to what that means, and vice versa for husbands and wives, or husbands knowing their wives need to be loved. Another reason why those numbers are significant, though, is because a couple thousand years before this study was done, and we confirmed what's been known for a long time, the Apostle Paul wrote a letter to a church in Ephesus, and he wrote them these words. And I could read, but it's behind me, and I'd rather not. So can somebody read this verse out loud, please?
Verse 33. So again I say, each man must love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband. All right.
So there it is. So if you line up with the Christian tradition, like, there's a lot of power in this. Even if you don't, just statistically it proves that, like, this is important. Now, what I want to point out from this and spend all of my time, what's left of it, talking about right now, is that when this was written, if you notice, it's not conditional. Right? And this was the part that we really needed to catch up on in our marriage, is that here's what Paul didn't say. Hey, husband, you really only need to act in a loving way towards your wife when you think she's being respectful enough. And then once she is, then you need to love her. He didn't say that, obviously. And then vice versa, he didn't tell wives, hey, if you don't think he's very loving, like if he's always tripping over his boots and he's being stupid or whatever, like, then don't bother with the respect thing. Only do it when you feel like it. Now, I don't need to go into why he didn't say it that way, like why he didn't make it conditional. Human nature would really, well, it wreaks havoc on us when we ignore this, or we only do it when we feel like it. What he said was, to the husbands, like, you don't have an option. Like, if you put a ring on her finger and you said you're going to stay forever, well, then you got to keep acting in a loving way. You have to. Either your faith tells you that you have to, if you're a Christian, or statistics tell you that it's really wise that you keep doing it. And the same thing for wives. Now, the reason why, here's even another reason why this is important. So the guy who wrote this book, here's the book, Love and Respect. He's a Christian psychologist, and he's gotten a lot of mileage out of this book. It's a good book. It's over there. If you want it, you can take it with you. Let me say something about that. So y'all have the little ticket for the resource table. So it says one item. You don't have to take only one. Like, you can take more than one. But we do ask that you don't take more than one copy of the same book per couple. That's all. But if you want 2 or 3 different books, like, take them. That's what they're there for. This is a great book. He takes 300 and some pages to say what he probably could have in about 10. And so if you're looking for a book, it wouldn't be the first one I recommend, even though I'm talking about it today. But here's what he describes. So he says that an average fight that ignores the love and respect principle, he describes it as the crazy cycle, which basically means, so like, husband comes home from work at like 5. It doesn't matter which one I pick. We'll say the husband. And he's had a bad day, or for whatever reason, he says something rather snarky to his wife that comes across pretty unloving. Right? And so she reactively, maybe without even thinking about it, maybe she does think about it. We'll give her the benefit of the doubt up front. She doesn't think about it. She just instinctively responds with something that to him feels pretty stinking disrespectful. And so they part ways and do some stonewalling for about 30, 40 minutes. And then they come back pretty deliberate, right? And they have done some thinking about it. And he goes back and he says something to her that he knows. Because like, you know your spouse and you know really how to push their buttons really well. And so you say, if I say this, it's really going to make her mad. So you come back and you say something that's extremely unloving, which of course does not motivate her to further like change and now be respectful. And so she digs in and says something that she's is really going to like, you know, stab at you. And then we just spin on this wheel, like reactively feeding off of each other's bad decisions over and over. And he calls that wheel the crazy cycle. The only way to stop it is to take this command that Paul gave as an actual command and act differently than you actually feel. Right? Like, stop being a victim to your feelings. We really can't do that once we're older than the age of 3. And then we have to actually sometimes act in a way that is not in congruence with how I currently feel. And spin off of this cycle, is the way he describes it. Like, stop it from spinning and say, you know what, I'm going to go first. Let me say that again. The best way to stop this is for you to decide, like, I'm going to be the hero here. Don't say that out loud. But you can say that in your mind, like, I'm going to be the hero in this situation, and I'm going to go first. The last thing I feel right now is to be loving towards my wife. But I said I would. And so I'm not going to wait for her to be as respectful as I think she should be. I'm going to go first, and I'm going to stop this cycle and de-escalate it, as Chaplain Wilson talked about earlier. Of course, way easier said than done. Like, way, way easier said than done. But the other option is to keep fighting. And I ran across something a couple of weeks ago that I loved, and I shared it. It was talking about like different hard decisions. Some of you may have seen this. It's made a lot of traction on the internet. And they were saying, like, working out and getting in shape is hard, right? But so is being fat and like out of shape and unhealthy. Like, that's hard too. And so I gave a bunch of different examples, and it said, you just really need to choose your hard. Because, like, staying married, oh dear God, it's hard. Like, as Chaplain Smith said, it is not a movie. It is like, there's no real Disney ending here where like the squirrels iron your pants for you and the birds chirp and like make orange juice for you every morning. Like, we find out pretty quickly that, yeah, that ain't going to happen. So staying married is hard, but so is getting a divorce. Like, that's hard. That brings its own set of difficulties with it, especially if kids are involved. Like, that's hard too. And so we just got to pick which hard we're willing to deal with. And often, like, stopping the crazy cycle, the hardest thing to do, I'll just speak for me. I'm not going to speak for anybody in the room, even though every guy is thinking what I'm going to say. The hardest thing to do is swallow my stinking pride, even when I'm right, especially when I'm right. Especially when I'm right. And go back and be loving anyway. If for no other reason, it's in my own self-interest to knock it off and give her what I know she needs and what she's probably waiting on, which is for me to be more loving, and vice versa. Does that make sense so far? Has anyone heard of this concept before? This is probably not new to some of you, right? Yeah, the idea of love and respect. So what I want to do for the next couple minutes is get really practical about how to do that. Because it doesn't really matter if I think I'm acting in a loving way towards Hannah. Hannah's my wife. But she doesn't agree. Like, what matters is that I'm showing her love in a way that means something to her, and then vice versa. Like, what matters is that she's actually demonstrating respect in a way that I appreciate. And so if you read the book, he breaks down, he's got a couple acronyms for how to understand love in a female way and respect in a male way. And so we're going to go through them rather quickly. they're good, but I think they're really just good to kind of prime the pump and get you thinking about, all right, how can I jump inside the head of my spouse and act in a way that they appreciate? What really matters at the end of the day is that, here's a novel idea, but I do suggest it. Ask your spouse. Like, we've gotten in the habit of, we're pretty consistent with this and asking, hey, did that just feel loving to you? Like, am I doing this the right way? And sometimes it feels a little clunky and a little awkward, but it works. Flat out ask your husband, hey, is this the most respectful way that I can act around you? Or is there something that I could change and you would appreciate that more? And if it feels a little weird asking them that question, just think about how much you would appreciate them asking you that. Right? Like, if your wife came to you and said, hey, what's the best way I can respect you? You probably have answers ready. Well, that should tell you that so does she, if you asked her that question. Like, she does too. But let's go through his examples here pretty quickly. Quote from the book, a man's greatest need and first desire is respect, and a woman's is love. Of course, statistics don't always hold true. This may not be you. And if you know for sure that this is not you, okay, then just adapt to it in a way that works for you. Like, you're the expert on you, I'm not. But by and large, most people line up here. So, from the beginning, God made them male and female. And he makes this point in the book because we tend to value things differently. And so I want to talk about love from a female perspective for a few minutes, and then respect from a male perspective. These are the acronyms that he puts in the book. We'll just break them down here. So we'll talk about females first. This is the female acronyms. And if you want any of these slides that you've seen today, just let us know afterwards, or reach out to any of your unit chaplain and let us know, and we can email you any of this stuff. All right, closeness. This is pretty self-explanatory. Like, she wants to be close to you. Like, and that, of course, can take a couple different forms. Like, emotionally, she wants to be closer to you. Physically, maybe your spouse is not the physical touch kind of guy, kind of wife. But by and large, whether it's physical or emotional, this matters to women in a way that maybe is more significant than in a way that matters to men. Closeness, we'll just kind of zip through all these and talk about them together here in a minute. Openness, she wants you to talk to her, like actually talk. So one of the terms that we use in our marriage to talk about our wedding rings, and we do this on purpose in front of our kids, is we talk about our wedding ring like it's as a shackle. And of course, it sounds extremely unromantic. I get it. But we mean it in a very, very, very endearing way, that we're shackled together. And the reason why we use that term on purpose, especially like in front of our kids, is because we want them to see that by no means do we view marriage like in a Disney fantasy sort of way. Like, it's a forever thing that sometimes you have to renew on a pretty consistent basis, like daily, like, all right, I'm going to be married to you again today. Probably you would rather not today because you were a butthead yesterday. But the shackle, well, shackles don't come off. And here's the reason why we use it, another reason why we talk about it often as such a permanent binding thing. If you think about it, the only way for you to ever get close enough to talk to someone in a real way and get them to really know you is if you knew there was no option of that person actually leaving. Like, because you know you. And that's pretty scary. All right, like, I'm pretty messed up. Like, I got stuff I don't want read out loud, and so do you. And there's no way I would ever share that with anybody if I actually thought they would leave. And so I have at least one person in the world who is shackled to me, and she can't go anywhere. Sometimes she would like to, for sure, and so would I. But that allows me to be honest with at least one person on the planet who gets to know me like warts and all. That's the benefit of seeing marriage as forever. Anyway, we can get back to that later if you want. But I would say there's no way that you're ever going to grow truly close to somebody and actually let them know you, like the real you, if you thought they would use it against you or they were going to leave. Like, if for no other reason, that's an argument that marriage needs to be an eternal shackle. There's a more romantic word if you want, but that's the one I use. All right, let's keep moving. Understanding. We've heard this a million times, like, right? Don't try to fix her. Just listen and try to understand. I don't want to stop on all these because I don't have time to. but probably cannot overstate the importance of this one. I'd say a question that I've got a lot of mileage out of in my marriage, and Hannah seems to appreciate it, is how did that make you feel? And she'll tell you. Ask her. Don't assume you know. Ask her. How did that make you feel? Scored a lot of points, guys. A lot of points. Peacemaking. So we're building an acronym here. Couple is the female side. I know a lot of guys struggle with this, like coming to your spouse and saying that you're sorry, and because that means that you were wrong. And as your chaplain and someone who really cares about you deeply, if you struggle with this, what I have to tell you is get over yourself. For real, like you're not that big of a deal. To be perfect your entire life, like you're obviously not. And so if you struggle with saying I was wrong, you got to get over yourself. And the quicker the better, because your spouse already knows you're wrong. So the only thing you add, like new information to the conversation by saying that you're wrong, the only thing you add to that is integrity. Oh, they actually are willing to admit that they're wrong. So make some peace. Go first, men, by saying that you're wrong, especially when you are wrong. Loyalty. She needs to know that you're committed to her. This could be a whole sermon in itself. But like, there's no shortage of things that can draw your attention off of your wife. Don't let it happen. Or if it does happen, you're like, stop immediately and tell her, hey, I'm sorry. But she needs to know that you only have eyes for her. Make that clear. And then the last one, esteem. She wants to know that you honor and cherish her, that she matters to her a lot. I don't know if this is against like universally true, but I read a great little book a while back that said, like, the heart of every human being, there's a question that we're asking, and it depends on our gender. Men want to know, do I have what it takes? Right? Like, am I enough to take care of business and get her done? Like, do I have what it takes? Every man needs to know that. Every woman wants to know, am I worth it? Like, am I worth the struggle? Do I have enough value to you? Am I worth it? And I think that backs up this last one here. She wants to know that she matters to you. Probably the first thing that comes to mind on this last one is, like, if your spouse ever feels like she's competing with your job, that certainly is going to hurt this last one here. Like, that we're already losing here. Don't ever make your wife feel like she's competing with your job. All right, so those are 6 things to kind of prime the pump and help you communicate love in a way that means something to your wife. If none of these mean anything to your wife, then ignore all of them, because then they don't matter. Like, ask her, hey, which of those resonated with you? And if none of them, then tell me what I can do to be more loving and communicate love to you. All right, let's go through the husband ones fairly quickly. All right, conquest. Appreciate his desire to work and achieve. So I tell wives all the time, like, by and large, most husbands are not afraid of hard work. Like, we actually embrace it. But we need to know that we're playing a game that we can win. All right, so appreciate that about your husband and let him know that you do. Like, at the end of the day, if you're a guy, and I'm speaking stereotypically here, this may not work for everybody, but most of the games that we start inventing from the time we're like 4 until we die are somehow involved with us winning something, like killing a dragon or rescuing somebody. We get older, like, the games just get more expensive, but our mindset really doesn't change very much. Like, we just need to go out and conquest and knock something down or stab some bad guy or whatever it is. Even the games that we play with our thumbs, like they all have this at the root of it. And I think it's because we're wired that way. Hierarchy. So appreciate his desire to protect and provide for you. One of the things that many people are bothered by with the Ephesians 5 thing that we just read is this idea of leadership. And I'm not here to change your worldview. I'm not trying to do that by any means. Just realize that inside of your husband is this idea that he's supposed to provide for you. And that can be taken a lot of different ways. There are a lot of things that men can, I would say should, provide. If you get in the way of that, it's really only to your own detriment. Appreciate your husband's need and his desire to protect and provide for you. Authority. Honor his desire to serve and lead. So this is where it can get kind of dicey with some of us, depending on where you line up with your faith background. But I would say this. Men tend to carry a fairly heavy load of responsibility. And I don't say that as if women don't. But we are keenly aware of the fact that we are responsible for a lot of stuff. At the very least, I would say to wives, like, acknowledge that. See that we are carrying a heavy load. Like, we'll knock walls down for you all day long. And we'll go charge hell with a squirt gun if you think that we have it in us to actually win that fight. So find a way to let your husband know that you see that and you appreciate it in him. Insight. Call on his desire to analyze and counsel. So earlier I said, like, husbands, stop trying to fix your wives. She just wants you to listen. Well, that's a two-way street. Like, wives, stop stopping your husbands from trying to fix something. Like, knock it off. It's not in your best interest to not let him fix anything. And if you really want bonus points, go to him and ask him to fix something. There's one thing to, like, allow us to do what we feel like we're designed to do. It's a whole different level of achievement to actually try to pull that out and encourage it. Like, go to your husband and say, hey, here's some powerful words I recommend that wives use. What is your opinion? Like, ask it. You don't even have to follow his advice. Noted. Stupid. Illegal. Noted. Just ask. What is your opinion?
Empowerment.
There we go, man. I love it. I love it. All right. Relationships. Be his friend. This may seem really obvious, but I think it just needs to be said more often. So if you look at what guys do when we hang out, we don't sit around a table and talk all day. Like, that's the female way of hanging out, statistically, not always, but not for us. Like, when we get together, we do stuff. Like, women hang out face to face, right? And talk. Men hang out side by side, and we do stuff together. It's neither right nor wrong, but that's how most men communicate. Like, they have a relationship that matters is we do stuff together. If there's guys I can't do anything together with, then I don't hang out with those guys. Use that to your advantage. And don't overthink your role in it. Like, if your husband's a gamer, you don't have to be a great gamer. Show a little interest. Like, sit next to him. I always think it's worth stopping to say, husbands, like, if all you ever do is game, like, knock it off and go do something else. But your wife can participate in a little bit of that. I'll tell you what meant so much to me. Anybody ever watch the show Deadliest Catch? I don't even know if it's still on TV. I love that show. And Hannah thinks it's the dumbest thing on earth. And I don't care. Like, she doesn't have to like it. Like dirty fish and, like, sailors cussing at each other out in the middle of the ocean. I love it. I just love it. She would come and sit next to me, and I know she hated the show. And she would just watch the show with me. I can't tell you exactly why that meant so much to me, but it did. Find a way to do something with your husband. Like, be his friend, find an activity. I would say ask him. He's probably already got one in mind. Well, we'll get to that. That's the last one. All right? Sexuality. Respond to his need for sexual intimacy. However much you think sex matters to your husband, like, you're probably way underscoring the reality. It's a big deal to us. I'm not saying it's not a big deal to women, but it's a big deal to us. Again, we could talk all day about this. I just don't have time for it. But it's a bigger deal than you think. One of the things I always tell wives, and I'm going to kind of sell you out here for a minute, husbands, but it's okay. I love you enough to do it. We are way, way more insecure than you realize. Yeah, we are. Not just in this area, like in every area. In every area. So I said a minute ago, like, if Hannah thinks I'm capable, I'll charge hell with a squirt gun all day long. If she thinks I'm an idiot, which if she does, she's done a good job for 18 years of not telling me. I have a hard time getting out of bed. Like, her opinion of me matters significantly. Maybe more than it should sometimes, but it's a big deal. I say that at this point because one of the best ways to boost your husband's extremely fragile ego is in this area right here, sexuality. It matters to us a lot. And I always talk about sex as a two-way street. So emotional intimacy tends to matter more to women statistically. whereas physical intimacy means more to us. Well, both of you can use that to your advantage, right? It's a two-way street. The best way to touch your husband's soul is through this, right here, sexually. Men, the best way to touch your wife's soul is emotionally. Like, meet those needs for one another, and you're unstoppable. Like, I just can't overestimate that enough. But I want to make good use of your time. Again, so I'm done with these. If none of these matter to your husband, I guarantee you one of them does. But if none of them do, ask him. Ask him what does. Find out how you can communicate respect in a way that means a lot to him. But I promise you, he is more horny than you realize. There's that one mess. So, yes, I said that. We're all adults here, and we're married. Okay, so I'll end with this, and then we'll... did the chaplain just say horny? Yep. I have 6 kids, and none of them are immaculately conceived. All right? Yes, I have a good marriage. I'll end with this. So when we first started working on our marriage, early on, and we went to a counselor, we wore the guy out. Like, he was exasperated with us. We were that couple. It was awful. And I could see one day he was just like falling down in his chair, and he breathed out through a lot of disgust this to us: you're never going to get what you need from your spouse by denying them what they need from you. And it was like it blew our minds, because that's exactly what we were doing. We had a standoff going. And there's no way I'm going to give you what you need from me until you give it to me first. And it was just wrecking our entire lives. This idea changed a lot for us. Now, we're both still sinners, right? And marriage is messy. You throw kids on top of it, and they're disgusting. So it's hard. I'm not at all painting this picture that now I live in a Disney movie, because I don't. But this made a really, if I could pick one thing, this idea changed everything for us.